The wind screams through the icy valleys of the Alps. Snow swirls like white fire, illuminated by floodlights that pierce the darkness. Down the mountain, a steel bullet carves its path through the frozen track, blurring time, bending gravity. Inside it, 4 men move as one, their breath shallow, their muscles locked in a symphony of motion. At the front, steering with precision born of countless hours of repetition, sits Bernhard Lehmann. Calm, focused, unbreakable. The world outside is a blur of ice and echo, but inside the cockpit there is only rhythm, the hum of runners, the beat of his heart, and the unrelenting pursuit of perfection. This was not a moment born of luck. It was carved from discipline, from years of cold mornings, from endless training sessions in the shadow of mountains. Lehmann's journey began far from Olympic lights, on the modest streets of Grossrechen, a small East German town surrounded by coal mines and frost. He was born into a humble household, where work ethic was not taught through words, but through the quiet example of those who endured. His father, a handball coach, instilled in him the values of teamwork, dedication, and respect for the game. Young Bernhard grew up chasing balls across rough grass fields, sliding in the mud, learning the joy of competition. Handball was his first love, and through it he discovered a simple truth: that victory comes to those who push harder, think smarter, and never give up. As a teenager, he played with intensity that surprised older teammates. He wasn't the loudest or the flashiest, but he had something rarer: a quiet fire. When others went home, he stayed to train. When others lost focus, he stared harder at the goal. But destiny often hides behind detours. In his late teens, Bernhard joined the National People's Army, where his strength and discipline found a new channel. There, surrounded by men who thrived on precision and endurance, he competed in rigorous military sports: running, climbing, throwing. It was in those competitions that he first discovered his love for the edge between control and chaos, the very space where bobsleigh would later take him. The physicality, the coordination, the explosive energy required for sprinting and pushing, it all pointed to one thing. He didn't know it yet, but his future was waiting at the bottom of an icy track. When he was introduced to bobsleigh, it wasn't love at first sight. It was awe. The machine was unlike anything he had ever seen: sleek, metallic, and alive with potential energy. The first time he pushed one down the track, he felt a surge unlike anything before. The cold air tore at his face, his body screamed from the effort, and yet his heart soared. This, he thought, is speed in its purest form. From that moment, he was hooked. The field was replaced by frozen curves, the handball by steel runners. His life changed course. Training as a bobsledder in East Germany was no easy task. It was a discipline born from pain and precision. Mornings began before dawn, in biting cold that stiffened the joints. Weight training filled the early hours. Explosive sprint drills came next. And by afternoon, endless practice runs, each one a test of strength, focus, and courage. The sled itself weighed hundreds of kilos, demanding both brute force and technical mastery. Bernhard learned how to feel the ice under the runners, how to balance on instinct, how to trust the team behind him as if they were extensions of his own will. Soon, his potential caught the eye of national coaches. He was built for the sport, broad-shouldered, disciplined, with an iron mind. Within 2 years, he was competing internationally. And in 1976, his life would change forever. The Winter Olympics in Innsbruck, Austria, an event that would write his name into history. The crowd filled the stands, breath crystallizing in the air, flags waving beneath snowflakes. The 4-man team took their positions, muscles tense, hearts pounding. The signal came. They sprinted down the ice, every step echoing through the mountains. The sled roared forward, slicing the track with perfect precision. Bernhard leaned into the turns, his senses sharpened to the brink of human capability. In that tunnel of speed, everything else disappeared. No fear, no doubt, only focus. When the sled crossed the line, the clock froze. The time flashed in red, gold. As the anthem rose over the peaks, Lehmann stood on the podium, snow glinting like diamonds around him. In his mind, he saw every early morning, every push, every bruise and ache. He thought of his father, of his hometown, of the long road from muddy fields to Olympic glory. The tears came not from pride, but from gratitude. He knew that this victory was built on years of invisible effort. Yet success did not soften him. If anything, it made him hungrier. After Innsbruck, he decided to master not only strength but control. He moved from brakeman to pilot, from muscle to mind. It was a new challenge. Steering demanded anticipation, intuition, and an almost spiritual connection with the sled. He studied every track curve by curve, learned how wind and temperature changed ice texture, how to find the perfect line that could shave milliseconds off a run. Nights were spent visualizing, imagining every corner, every movement of the sled, until he could feel the turns in his sleep. The following years were filled with both triumph and trial. In the early 1980s, he came close to gold more than once. Silver at World Championships, second places that burned with quiet frustration. But rather than discouraging him, they sharpened his resolve. He trained harder than ever. Hours of push starts, explosive sprints in the snow, heavy lifting, endless video analysis. He turned his setbacks into science. A race is never lost on the track, he told his teammates. It's lost in preparation. By 1984, at the Sarajevo Winter Olympics, Lehmann returned to the world stage as both veteran and visionary. The East German team was among the strongest in history. The two-man and four-man events came down to fractions of seconds. When the final times appeared, Bernhard stood on the podium once again, 2 silver medals gleaming against his chest. He smiled. He knew that perfection isn't always measured in gold. Consistency, endurance, grace under pressure. These were victories too. But the best was yet to come. In 1985, at the World Championships in Italy, Bernhard and his crew delivered one of the finest runs in bobsleigh history. The sled moved like a living organism. Each push, each lean, each correction perfectly synchronized. They crossed the line, and the numbers confirmed what they all knew. World champions. For Bernhard, it was more than another medal. It was a validation of a lifetime's craft. He would go on to compete again in Calgary in 1988, this time claiming bronze. His body bore the marks of years of impact and strain, but his mind remained razor-sharp. He had become a mentor to younger teammates, guiding them with wisdom rather than words. His leadership was quiet but powerful. When he spoke, others listened. After retirement, Bernhard found new purpose in teaching. He became a coach, passing on his knowledge to the next generation of athletes. Among his protégés were future Olympic champions who would carry his legacy into the new era of unified Germany. He coached not just technique, but mentality, the art of focus, the power of composure, the belief that courage is born from preparation. His athletes often said that he didn't just teach them how to win, he taught them how to think. Away from the noise of competition, Bernhard lived a simple, grounded life. He loved the mountains, the quiet forests, the way snow softened the world at dawn. In his spare moments, he'd walk alone in the cold morning air, reflecting on the past, his breath forming clouds that drifted into the pale sky. For him, peace was found not in medals, but in mastery, knowing that he had given everything to his craft. Looking back, Lehmann's story is not merely one of victory, but of transformation. From a boy in East Germany to an Olympic legend. From a young handball player to a man who conquered ice and gravity. His journey teaches us that greatness is not a gift. It is a decision made every day in silence when no one is watching. It is the decision to rise, to try again, to believe when others doubt. He once said to a young athlete, "You can't control the ice, but you can control yourself. That's how you win, by mastering your mind before the world." Today his name remains etched in the history of winter sport, not just as a champion, but as a craftsman of speed, a teacher of courage, and a symbol of relentless perseverance. And as the snow continues to fall on the silent tracks of Oberhof and Winterberg, you can almost hear the echo of his sled carving through the turns, the rhythm of his breath, the whisper of steel on ice. The man may have stepped off the sled, but the spirit of Bernhard Lehmann still rides the wind. Because legends don't fade, they glide forever. If Bernhard Lehmann's journey inspired you, the story of a man who turned cold and steel into glory, then let his courage remind you that every dream begins with a push. Every challenge is a track waiting to be conquered. If you believe in discipline, in heart, and in never giving up, then your victory is already waiting. Like this story, share it with someone who needs to feel its fire, and subscribe to Behind the Medal for more cinematic journeys of athletes who turn struggle into strength and strength into history. Because the race never ends, it only changes tracks.